On the night of September 12, 1997, 6 men walked into a heavily fortified cash processing facility in Los Angeles and walked out with $18.9 million in cash. No one was shot, no alarms were triggered, no safes were cracked. The building's security systems were fully operational the entire time. So how did they do it? The answer is the part that should terrify you, because the most dangerous threat to any secure system isn't a sophisticated hacker or a criminal mastermind. It's someone who already has the keys. The setup. To understand the Dunbar heist, you first need to understand what Dunbar Armored was. By the late 1990s, Dunbar was one of the largest armored car companies in the United States. The kind of company most people never think about, but whose work makes the financial system function. Every morning, Dunbar vehicles quietly fanned out across Los Angeles to restock ATMs, collect cash from banks, and transport the physical currency that keeps the economy moving. Their central facility on Mateo Street in South Los Angeles was essentially a privately operated cash vault, processing millions of dollars every single day. The public's image of an armored car heist comes from the movies. Masked men with rocket launchers forcing a truck to the side of the road. What happened at Dunbar was nothing like that. There were no car chases, no hostages, no dramatic standoffs. There was only one real weapon involved, and it wasn't a gun. It was a floor plan. The mastermind behind the robbery was Alan Pace III. On paper, Pace was exactly the kind of employee Dunbar valued, a regional safety inspector with a decade of company experience, a steady work history, and a reputation as a trustworthy, detail-oriented professional. His job gave him regular access to every corner of the Mateo Street facility, including the loading docks, the vault schedules, and, critically, the security procedures. He knew exactly when the most cash was on site. He knew how the guards rotated. He knew which doors led where. Alan Pace didn't need to case the building. He'd been studying it for years. The perfect team. What Alan Pace needed were 5 men he could trust completely. And in 1997, he found them in his own childhood. Pace recruited a tight circle of friends he'd known since growing up in Compton. Eugene Hill, Freddie McCrary, Clifford Pace, Calvin Pace, and Eric Boyd. These weren't professional criminals with long rap sheets. Most of them had ordinary lives, ordinary jobs, but they trusted Alan Pace, and Alan Pace had a plan that seemed almost impossibly clean. The beauty of the scheme was its simplicity. Because Pace already had legitimate access to the facility, there was no need to forge badges or disable cameras. He knew how to time their entry to avoid both. He knew the exact window when the cash count would be highest and the staffing would be lowest. In the days leading up to the robbery, Pace mapped out every step with precise instructions for his crew. This was not the work of impulsive criminals improvising on the fly. This was a rehearsed, methodical operation built entirely on inside knowledge. The night of September 12th, the crew arrived at the Dunbar facility armed and masked. Using Pace's knowledge of guard rotations and entry points, they moved through the building swiftly and with chilling efficiency. Guards were restrained without serious violence. The crew located the cash room, a room that Alan Pace knew as well as his own home, and spent the next several minutes loading duffel bags with bundled bills. In roughly 30 minutes, 6 men had loaded $18.9 million in cash into a rented truck and vanished into the Los Angeles night. The morning after, when Dunbar employees arrived for the morning shift on September 13, 1997, what they found defied easy explanation. The facility had not been breached from the outside. The security systems had not been tampered with. There was no obvious forced entry. What there was, simply, was an almost incomprehensible absence of money. Nearly $19 million gone. For investigators, the scene pointed immediately and unmistakably to an inside job. The FBI and LAPD launched a joint investigation, and detectives began working through Dunbar's employee roster. The attack had been too targeted, too precise. Whoever had planned this knew the vault schedules, knew the blind spots in the surveillance, knew the exact cash count. It was the work of someone who had done a very long, very patient reconnaissance from the inside. But even knowing it was an inside job, the investigation stalled. Pace and his crew were disciplined. They kept quiet. They kept their distance. For months, the Dunbar heist sat as one of the most audacious, unsolved robberies in American history. And then, As is so often the case, it was human nature, not detective work, that broke the case open. The unraveling. The mistake was one the FBI sees in almost every major financial crime. Sudden, visible wealth in a world where it has no explanation. One of the crew members began spending, conspicuously. A new car here. Cash purchases there. It doesn't take a trained investigator to notice that someone who made ordinary wages last year is living very differently this year. Word spread through the community. Someone talked the way someone always eventually talks. In 1998, almost a year after the heist, a tip led investigators back to Alan Pace. Searches of properties connected to the crew recovered millions in cash, still rubber-banded in the original Dunbar wrappers. Alan Pace was arrested. So were 4 of the 5 co-conspirators. When the case went to trial, the evidence was overwhelming. The FBI had the money, literally stamped with Dunbar's markings. They had witnesses from inside the social circle, and they had the one thing no clever plan could fully account for: the fact that 6 people who committed a crime together would, under enough pressure, eventually stop protecting each other. Resolution. In 2000, Alan Pace III was convicted of armed robbery and sentenced to 24 years in federal prison. His co-conspirators received sentences ranging from 4 to 17 years. Approximately $10 million of the stolen $18.9 million was never recovered, likely spent, hidden, or distributed in the window between the heist and the arrests. The Dunbar case became a landmark study in both criminal planning and criminal failure. The plan itself was, in a narrow technical sense, nearly perfect. Pace had used his legitimate access to eliminate almost every variable that causes heists to fail. Security systems, guard response, safe cracking, external entry. For a few months, it worked. But Pace had made one catastrophic miscalculation. He had planned the robbery flawlessly, and the aftermath not at all. $18.9 million is an amount that cannot simply be absorbed into ordinary life. It has to go somewhere, and everywhere it goes, it leaves traces in bank accounts, in purchases, in the behavior of people who suddenly feel rich. The FBI has a phrase for it: lifestyle elevation. It's one of the most reliable signals of financial crime. You don't need to catch a thief in the act if you can prove they're living a life the math doesn't support. The most sophisticated heist in American history wasn't defeated by better security technology. It was defeated by the same human frailties that undermine almost every financial crime: greed, loose talk, and the irresistible urge to spend. The Dunbar heist still holds the record as the largest cash robbery on U.S. soil, a title that says something important about where financial crime has since migrated. Today, the equivalent of the Dunbar heist doesn't happen with duffel bags and rental trucks. It happens on servers. The Bangladesh bank cyber heist of 2016, which nearly netted $1 billion through the SWIFT banking network, followed an almost identical logic to what Alan Pace exploited: intimate knowledge of an institution's internal systems, patient reconnaissance, and a strike timed precisely to exploit the gaps between when humans are paying attention. The threat model has changed. The core vulnerability hasn't. Every institution's weakest point is the person who already has the keys. If this kind of story is your thing, the real mechanics of how financial systems fail, and the surprisingly ordinary people who find the cracks, hit subscribe. Every week I cover a new chapter in the hidden history of money, the frauds, the heists, and the decisions that shape the financial world we live in. Drop a comment below. I want to know, what surprises you most about the Dunbar case? That it worked so perfectly for so long, or that it fell apart so fast once the money started moving?